friends, my name is Aubrey. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you all here with me today. So it is the end of May, the end of the month, so it is time to go through all of the books that I acquired during the month of May. And as usual for my book hauls, we're going to go through these books based on where I got them from, and I will say only 3 of these books were actually purchased during May. So the rest of them were either pre-orders, which makes up the majority of this stack, gifts, or like from a Kickstarter or a book subscription. So I guess technically that was purchased during May, but I don't count that. Okay, so we're going to actually start with some gifts that my brother gave me. So during the month, we actually went up to Boston to visit my brother and his girlfriend for their graduation from their master's program. And while we were there, my brother actually gave me 3 books that he had because he has been kind of going through his book collection in preparation of them moving, because they do plan on moving down south once their lease runs out. And so he and his girlfriend have been going through their book collection and looking for any that they might have like duplicates of that they don't necessarily want 2 copies of and things like that. And he actually gave me 3 books while we were up visiting. So the first one that I have is a tiny little book of poetry called The Queen of Seven Swords by G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton. And as you can see, it doesn't have a dust jack or anything, and I don't know how well you can see that, but someone has actually written the title and author on the spine because it wasn't there before. I think this came maybe from like a library, perhaps. But it's just this tiny, yeah, it came from Newton College of the Sacred Heart, apparently. Oh, and then it was in Boston College's library and was withdrawn. So it's just such an adorable tiny little book, and I am a big fan of beautiful poetry. My brother thought I would really like this, and it's funny because when I was in my master's program, one of my classmates, who was also a GSA with me at the time, we would hang out in the office and like talk, and we all got to be, friends with one another. And he told me that G.K. Chesterton gosh, I cannot get this poor name's his poor man's name right. Apparently I just can't talk right. So, but he told me that G.K. Chesterton is one of his favorite authors. So I think that's pretty cool that now I have a little book of his poems that I can read, and I'm really excited. It just feels very fragile though, so I feel like I need to be very delicate when I am reading, opening, holding, messing with it in general. And then he had copies of the 2nd and 3rd books in His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. So he actually gave me a copy of The Golden Compass. Was it earlier this year? I think it was earlier this year that he had, because I've read The Golden Compass, but I never finished the series and I didn't own any of them. And so he gave me a copy of The Golden Compass, and now he is giving me copies of The Subtle Knife, which is book 2, and The Amber Spyglass, which is book 3. So this would complete the original trilogy in this world. And I don't know if he had extra copies of these or if he found them like at a little free library or something. Because I think this one at least he had just gotten and was used, because when I got there he said, "Oh, that one's in the freezer still, let me get it out for you." Which, if you didn't know, if you have used books and you're not sure where they were kept, or if you were concerned about things like silverfish or mold, putting the book in the freezer within a like sealed plastic bag can actually help to kill off any mold or anything that might be in them and prevent that from spreading in the book or spreading to the other books in your library. So highly recommend doing that. But so I think he may have found this one somewhere and grabbed it for me. I'm not sure about this one, but I am happy to have these because, like I said, I've only read the first book in this series, so now I feel like it's been years since I read that one, so I feel like it needs a reread. But then I'll be able to actually continue, which is really nice. But I'm not going to read the synopses of these because they are not the first book in the series, but from what I remember, we follow Lyra, our main character, who is a child in this world where everyone has a daemon demon, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, which is essentially like a spiritual extension of yourself that takes the form of different animals. And when you're a child, it can transform between any animal it wants, depending on the situation and what it's trying to accomplish. But once you sort of settle, like hit puberty, your daemon will also settle and take a permanent form that represents you as a person. And Lyra lives at a college, I don't remember what college it is at the moment, with her guardian. However, she finds out that something is happening to these other children and their daemons, and so she goes on this quest to try to solve it. I'm pretty sure that's the gist of the first book. Again, it's been literal years since I've read it, so I may be getting something wrong, and if so, I apologize. But I am excited to continue this series to finally find out how it ends. And I am very extremely grateful to my brother for thinking of me. He has given me a number of books recently that was just so thoughtful. I'm just so grateful to him for doing that. Okay, so now all of the books that I bought for myself. So the first one that I have here is actually from a Kickstarter that came in during this past month, and that is Careful of Books, a novella collection by Cassandra Clare. So this is a book within the Shadowhunters Chronicles, and I had backed the Kickstarter for this collection of books that either were published in like a limited capacity or were never published physically and only published online, that were finally getting a nice, beautiful physical publication, because I do really want to get into the Shadowhunters world, and so I didn't want to miss out on having these so that I can have a complete collection eventually. But Careful of Books is the third one that has come out, I think, in that collection, and I think there's one, maybe two more. But I guess I should show the spine and the back cover. And then there are also these quotes on the little inside flaps there. And then you have the naked hardcover, and it does have the same design on the back. And the end papers, which are illustrated. And then the back end papers. And this collection has, I think, 4 different novellas in it. And from what I understand, just kind of like flipping through, they seem to be somehow related to different actual literary works. Like one of them is called Wendy Darling, which makes me think of Peter Pan. And when I was flipping through, I noticed the name Sherlock in one of them. So obviously Sherlock Holmes. And you can see that on the front cover. There are little images that represent or hint at the 4 different stories. So you can see in the different corners. But yeah, so very interesting. It'll be quite a while before I get to this, because I do read books in these bigger interconnected worlds in publication order. And I need to start still with the first book, because there's only one Shadowhunters book that I read, and it's not the first one of the first series, so I need to go back and start there and go from there. So it'll be a while till I get to these, but I am happy to have them because they're very well put together. They're very pretty. And I like having physical copies of like books. I'm not a big ebook person personally, just because I like to like hold them and see them. Nothing against ebooks or online content or anything like that. I read a lot of stuff online, but when I have the option, I like to have them physically. So I did go ahead and back this Kickstarter. Okay, and now getting into some pre-orders. So the next few books that I have here are all from Barnes & Noble, and they were all ordered during one of their like pre-order sales, which are so nice, so wonderful that they do that. So the first one that I have is How to Seal Your Own Fate. This is the second book in the Castle Knoll Files by Kristen Perrin. I loved the first book in this series so much, How to Solve Your Own Murder. My mom and I actually read it together and had a fantastic time doing so. So we're actually going to do the same with this book as well. But the first book, we follow Annie, who receives a letter in the mail telling her that she has become an heir in her Great Aunt Frances's will. So she needs to travel to Great Aunt Frances's home in the small English town of Castle Knoll so that she can meet with Frances's executor or lawyer, and then some other people who are also mentioned in the will. However, when Annie arrives, they find that Great Aunt Frances is dead. However, Great Aunt Frances, when she was 16, had gone to a carnival with two of her friends, and a fortune teller there predicted that one day she would be murdered. And so Frances kind of became obsessed with this prophecy. She spent her whole life kind of trying to figure out who could murder her and how, and ensuring that either she can stop herself and from being murdered, like prevent the murder, or at the very least, if she fails and does get murdered, that she will leave enough evidence and clues behind that someone else will be able to solve it. So now Annie is in Frances's home, surrounded by all of this information that she left, and is trying to figure out who killed Aunt Frances. And it is so good. It is such a fun murder mystery. I really enjoyed the way that the past and the present intertwined within the story. I thought it was really, really great. So I'm so excited to read this one. I've been anticipating this since as soon as this one was up for pre-order, I ordered it, and I told my mom about it, and she was like so excited. So she has recently finished the semester. She's a teacher, and the semester has recently ended, so she has some more free time. So the two of us are going to read this one together, and I'm so happy to have this. Okay, next I have book 4 of Heaven Official's Blessing, or Tianguan Si Fu, by Mo Xiang Tongshu, and this is the beautiful hardcover deluxe edition. So I have already read this series in its entirety. I do own all of the original paperbacks of the English translation that Yen Press put out, or not Yen Press, I'm sorry, Seven Seas put out. But they are putting out these beautiful hardcover deluxe editions, and I have just been pre-ordering them as well because I love this series so much, and these are so lovely. So I'll just show you the cover there. They also alternate between gold and silver foiling on these, which I think is really pretty. Then we have these sprayed edges, and once I have all laid of the books, once they've all come out, I'll show you all the sprayed edges together, because when you put them together they do make a cohesive image, which I think is a really nice touch. And then we have the naked hardcover, and if you've read the series, yes, you know what scene this is. In the back. Then we have the end papers, and the front and back end papers are the same. And then if you want to see the cover art kind of in its entirety, there it is. But this, other than the casing and the dust jacket, this is the same content as in the original paperback. So if you don't want these hardcovers, you can get the paperbacks and have all the same content, including all of the same internal art. You just will have different art on the actual book. And obviously you won't have the same end papers because it is a paperback, and you won't have the same cover art. But they're just beautiful. I love this series so much. We follow Prince Xilian, who was the crown prince of the kingdom of Xianle and ended up ascending to godhood. However, he was banished from the heavenly realm and forced to live in the human realm for several hundred years, and has kind of been cursed with very bad luck. He's constantly unlucky, has a lot of tragedies befall him, but at the start of book 1 he is actually reascended to godhood for the 3rd time. And so we follow him as he is trying to make a name for himself, because all of the other heavenly officials look down on him. They view him as a laughingstock. They don't treat him very well. And so he's trying to reestablish himself, get believers back on Earth. And in doing so, he meets a young man who calls himself Sanlong. However, Sanlong reminds him of a warning he recently got about one of the great calamities, one of the ghost kings, Crimson Rain Flower, Hua Chong, who all of the heavens fear. And so there is perhaps some connection between Xilian and Sanlong, something familiar. And that's all I'm really going to say. It's just such a fun story. The romance, it is a Danmei. The romance is so lovely. The characters are so lovely. Shilian is literally one of the best characters. He is so good-hearted and so kind and wonderful. And so it is translated from Chinese, and I will say some of these Chinese light novels and Danmei, the translation, it's not like written in this really beautiful style. It is more of like a more straightforward kind of plain writing style. So if that bothers you, then, you know, this may not be for you. But, oh, it also has Royer and a sword on the, is that a sword? Might be a staff. Anyway, maybe I should like look at the details more carefully on my own. I mean, I did, but anyway, I just love this series so much, and I'm really happy that they're producing these beautiful editions. So I am going to keep collecting them as they are released, and pre-ordering them as they're announced, but this is the most recent one to have come in. Alrighty, so then I got Volume 3 of I Ship My Rival X Me comic. This is based on a Danmei novel by Peppa and is being adapted into a manhwa by Qualia. This is a full-color manhwa, and I have really been loving this. They're very thick for like a manga or manhwa volume, so I have been reading them as they come out instead of waiting to have 2 volumes to read together. And it's just such a delight. I have already read this volume. I read it in May. I really enjoyed it. We follow Wei Yanzi and Gu Yiliang, who are both very young idols in China who have entered onto the scene at the same time and have built up pretty big fan bases. However, their fans have started kind of a rivalry between the two groups, and they are also trying to, like, they're insinuating that there is also a rivalry between the two idols themselves, even though the two of them have always had positive interactions the few times that they have met one another in person. And Gu Yiliang's fans in particular can be very nasty towards Wei Yanzi online, which kind of brings him down. He's afraid that the only reason he is successful at all as an idol is because of his looks. He doesn't think he's very good at acting. But then Wei Yanzi discovers another group of fans for the two of them who actually ship them together as a couple. And this community is just so kind to both of them and seems so kind to one another, and is so wholesome, although they do sometimes indulge in more mature content. But he just likes the way that it makes him feel to interact with these people and see the way that they talk about him and the way they interact with one another. So he ends up joining this shipping community at the same time that he and Gu Yiliang are working together on a period drama. So the two of them actually start spending more time with one another and interacting with one another, and Wei Yanzi is starting to realize, hey, maybe these shippers are actually onto something. And it's just so cute. And this volume, I'm not going to get into this volume right now because I'll talk about it in my second quarter reading wrap-up, but I will say they're both just so dumb. They're both just so stupid and oblivious, and just, why are they like this? Someone needs to like sit them down and be like, okay, he is saying this and he is saying this, and this is what he means and this is what he's trying to do, because they're just not getting it. But anyway, I'm very happy to have this one. I'm very much looking forward to volume 4. And yeah, this series just continues to be a delight. And then the next thing that I have is a manga volume, so it's the newest volume in a series that I have started. I'm not up to date on, but I am collecting the volumes as they're released. And that is volume 8 of Magus of the Library by Mitsu Izumi. I love this series. I have only read the first 3 volumes, so I am a few behind at this point, but it's just so beautiful and wonderful, and if you're a book lover, which I'm assuming you are since you found your way to my little corner of the internet, then you will really appreciate the messages that are in here. But in this series we follow Theo, who is a young boy who lives in a very rural town. He actually lives in the slums, and he is looked down on by most of the villagers because A, of his poverty, but B, because of his race. So Theo is actually half human and half something else. He is of mixed race. And this other race that he comes from, they're essentially like elves in this community. I say this all the time, but I literally cannot remember what they call them in this world. But they are essentially a race of elves. And so Theo doesn't look like anyone else in his town. They all have dark hair, dark skin, dark eyes. He is very pale, blonde, has green eyes, and has pointed ears. So he is not treated well by really anyone except his adopted sister, who cares for him and works very hard to send him to school so he can get an education. But Theo just really wants to read books, and he's not allowed to. He's not allowed to go to the library. And he's just kind of giving up on life because of how much cruelty he has faced at such a young age. But then one day, that all changes when he meets a Kafna. Kafna are librarians from the Great Library in the City of Books, called Afsak. And this Kafna actually, this Kafna actually changes Theo's life and helps him to get the strength to change his own life, more importantly. And he decides that he wants nothing more than to become a Kafna himself, and he works to just show people that physical differences don't matter, and to make a place for himself, and to just show kindness even to those who are cruel. And it's just also about self-acceptance and acceptance of others, and it's about books and how books can inspire empathy and change others' lives. And I literally go on a rant every time I talk about this, but I can't not. But all that aside, I'm very happy to have volume 8, and it is a very, very thick volume, which is really nice. And I am planning to get caught up on this series, hopefully this summer. So, yeah, I'm really excited. Have I read? Oh, wait, yes, because that volume 4 is over here. I was looking over there and I was like, I don't see my volume 4, but I don't think I've read it, but I know where it is. But yeah, and I will say, things are starting to, like, there is some conflict that has been brought to the reader's attention and to Theo's attention in volume 3. So I'm assuming, based on this cover, that things are going to get more serious. The stakes are going to get higher going forward. So, but anyway, I'm so excited to continue the series, and I'm so happy to have the newest volume. Then the last book that I got from Barnes & Noble during the month of May is actually a cookbook, and that is Baking Across America, a Vintage Recipe Road Trip by B. Dylan Hollis. If you've never heard of Dylan Hollis, he has a YouTube channel. My mom and I love him so much. Anytime he puts out a new short, we watch it together, usually during a meal that we're eating. But his specialty is baking vintage recipes, some of which are really, really good, and some of which are really, really terrible. So this is his second cookbook, and he has compiled essentially a list of recipes to represent different areas around the United States. So we have recipes from New England, the Mid-Atlantic, the South Atlantic, South Gulf, Southern Interior, the Great Lakes, the Great Plains, Mountain West, Southwest, and Pacific Northwest. And I just love him. He is so quirky and hilarious, and I love his passion for baking. I will say, he does make some very crude jokes at times, so do be aware if you are going to watch this with young ones around. Some of the things he says are not child appropriate, but he's just such a positive person, it seems, and I'm just really excited to try some of these recipes. We do, as we watch his little shorts, write down recipes that he seems to like that we think we would also like, but it's nice to have this actual book compiling all these recipes that he has put together. And I did actually pre-order the signed edition, so he did sign it, which is really, really cool. He is going on a book tour, but he's not coming anywhere near me, unfortunately, so I had to get the pre-signed version instead of being able to go and see him in person. Okay, so then I got 3 books in from Books A Million, and these were actually the 3 that I bought last month. So the first 2 that I bought, I actually got because I was buying the 3rd book, which I'll explain when I get to it. But the first 2 books that I have are from the series Kyle Murchison Booth by Sarah Monette. If you don't know, Sarah Monette is actually the name of Catherine Addison. Catherine Addison is a pen name. Catherine Addison is one of my favorite authors. She wrote The Angel of the Crows, which is one of my favorite books. She wrote The Chronicles of Ozreth, starting with The Goblin Emperor, which is one of my favorite series of all time. And so I am I recently caught up on The Chronicles of Ozreth. I'm trying to decide if I want to call it Ozreth or Ozreth, based on the pronunciation guide in the front of The Goblin Emperor. I think I'm leaning towards Ozreth. But if anyone knows for sure, please let me know in the comments. But I recently got completely caught up on the Chronicles of Ozreth, and I'm saying caught up because I refuse to believe that she's not going to write anymore in that world. And I need more of her writing. Having more of her books on standby just makes me feel better. So I got the 2 books in the Kyle Murchison Booth series, which is one of her older series. And so this is the first book, The Bone Key, The Necromantic Mysteries of Kyle Murchison Booth. The dead and the monstrous will not leave Kyle Murchison Booth alone, for an unwilling foray into necromancy has made him sensitive to, and attractive to, the creatures who roam the darkness of his once safe world. Ghosts, ghouls, incubi, all have one thing in common. They know Booth for one of their own. These 10 stories draw Booth from the safety of his work as a museum archivist into the darkness both of the supernatural and of the human psyche, where he will find answers to mysteries unsolved for decades and learn truths about himself he would rather never have known. This sounds so fun. It does sound quite a bit darker than the other books of hers that I've read, but I'm just such a big fan of her characters, and I really feel like I'm gonna like this guy. He's a museum archivist, but dabbles in necromancy, is kind of an unwitting detective. It sounds like a blast to me, so I did get this one. And then I also got A Theory of Haunting, which is a very short sequel to this story collection. So this one is not a collection, it is one story, but it is a sequel to the first book. So I believe that these are the only 2 books in this series. And I'm really excited to read it. I do think I'm going to save it for fall based on the content. Just seems much more appropriate for that time of year. But it does just make me happy to have more of her books to read, because as soon as I finished The Orb of Kairado, which is the most recent book in the Chronicles of Ozreth, I was really sad. So it makes me happy to have something else of hers that I can read. And now we come to the reason that I placed that Books A Million order in the first place, and that is because I needed to get a copy of I, Robot, which is the first book in the Robot series by Isaac Asimov. My brother has a book club that I and some of our friends and his girlfriend are in, and we meet online over Discord every couple months or so. It depends on how long the book is and how busy everybody is, to discuss a book that someone in the group has chosen. And my brother, the wheel chose him for the last one, so he picked I, Robot. And I needed to get a copy, and my local bookstore had already sold the only copy they had. I looked on Pango, and the only one that I could find that I really liked the cover, the condition that it was in, I wasn't willing to pay enough once you paid shipping. I wasn't willing to pay that much once you included shipping in the cost for a book in that condition. So I got one on Books A Million and ordered the 2 Kyle Murchison Booth books because I had a coupon to get 15% off my order, but I had to spend a certain amount of money. However, when it arrived, they put it in one of those stupid ravioli type packages, and it's quite bent in places on the spine, which is really sad, but I didn't want to return it because it's not unreadable and it's not torn or anything, and I was afraid they would throw it away if it was damaged, so I kept it. But anyway, so I did read this one for the book club, so I have already read it, but this, like I said, is the first book in the Robot series. I, Robot, the first and most widely read book in Asimov's Robot series, forever changed the world's perception of artificial intelligence. Here are stories of robots gone mad, mind-reading robots, robots with a sense of humor. Stories of robot politicians and robots who secretly run the world, all told with the dramatic blend of science fact and science fiction that became Asimov's trademark. The 3 laws of robotics. 1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey orders given to it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. With these 3 simple directives, Isaac Asimov formulated the laws governing robots' behavior. In I, Robot, Asimov chronicles the development of the robot from its primitive origins in the present to its ultimate perfection in the not-so-distant future, a future in which humanity itself may be rendered obsolete. So, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed a lot of the ethical conundrums that are brought up. Again, I'll talk about it in detail during my second quarter wrap-up. But I will say, if you've seen the movie, this book is nothing like the movie. This is a collection of stories that so we start with a character who is interviewing the very first robot psychologist, who at this point is in her 70s and is retiring from her job. And she is recounting a number of stories from her past and from the history of the development of androids, artificial intelligence, robots, and that is what makes up this book, are those stories that kind of bring up and set up this world. So nobody else in the book club realized that this was the first book in a series, and someone mentioned that it just seemed very formulaic, each of these stories. Something goes wrong and they have to fix it, yada yada. And I was like, well, I think that this book's job is more to set up this ethical conundrum and the rules of this world and the history of this world where these androids have been created, and show us examples of how humans relate to and interact with them. And it is nothing like the movie I, Robot. I do think, however, that the other 3 books in the series are going to be much more reminiscent of the movie because they seem to have, it has little blurbs for them in the back of my copy. They seem to have a more cohesive, one story per book, and they do follow a detective. So, a detective and a robot. So it seems like the movie I, Robot may have been inspired by one of those 3, or perhaps all 3 of them, I'm not sure. But this is a series I am going to continue at some point, but I am really glad to have read this and been able to participate in that discussion. Alright, then I got in 2 orders from the Broken Binding. So the first one is actually, I'm part of their Tier 2 fantasy subscription. So my books are not signed, but it's okay. I still get the nice, beautiful series that they're putting out for that subscription. Their books are just so amazing. So we just finished the Rook and Rose series by, is it M.A. Carrick? Yes, by M.A. Carrick. And so we have now started the Rift War Saga, which is the first book in Rift War Chronicles, I think, or maybe it's just called Rift War, I'm not sure, by Raymond E. Feist. So if you didn't know, the Rift War Saga, which is a trilogy, is actually the first of many series within this greater world. But the Broken Binding is doing this first trilogy. And so the first book we have here is Magician, and it is so lovely. Look at that. Look at that foiling. And the use of color on this cover is it's just incredible. We have the back. Then we have the sprayed edges, which again, just so beautiful. The naked hardback, which I particularly love because we have a dragon. Look at that. Look at how pretty this is. It's so beautiful. Then we have the front end papers. And the back end papers. So I have never read this series before, but it has been on my want to try list, and I'm really excited that the Broken Binding is doing it. But since this is the first book in the series, I will go ahead and read the synopsis. The world had changed even before I discovered the foreign ship, wrecked on the shore below Crydy Castle, but it was the harbinger of the chaos and death that was coming to our door. War had come to the kingdom of the Isles, and in the years that followed it would scatter my friends across the world. I longed to train as a warrior and fight alongside our duke like my foster brother, but when the time came I was not offered that choice. My fate would be shaped by other forces. My name is Pug. I was once an orphaned kitchen boy, with no family and no prospects, but I am destined to become a master magician. Oh, it sounds so cool. I'm so excited to read this. Like, it sounds so fun. I love a good epic fantasy. And again, I've said this before, but the editions that the Broken Binding puts out, they just make me even more excited to read these series because of how absolutely beautiful they are. Then the other book that I got from the Broken Binding in May is Leviathan, an Asher and Evandriel story. So this is a novella that takes place in Verda, which is a series by Philip C. Cointrell, and is a series that I really, really want to start. But this was never published physically from what I understand. It was published digitally, and then the Broken Binding released a limited special edition run of it that you could get. And since this is a series I'm very confident that I'm going to like, and like I said, I like to have my physical media, I did go ahead and pre-order this, and it's got these beautiful purple sprayed edges, a lovely map on the end papers, and I believe, yes, it is signed by the author. So I don't exactly remember what Verda is about. I know that the first series, publication-wise, that came out was the Echo Saga, and in it we follow a character who is like immortal, I think. I'm not really sure, and this is obviously not the first book in this world, so I'm not going to read the synopsis, but I do have the first book, which is, sorry, it has all the names back here, Rise of the Ranger. So that is the first book in the Echo Saga, which is the first series in this world, and then we have the Ranger Archives, and then A Time of Dragons, which is the current series that he is working on. And I do have the first two books in that series because I did get lovely editions from the Broken Binding, so I'm really happy to have this so that once I finish the Echo Saga I can read this and actually have a copy to put on my shelf, and it's just so pretty. Then I got in an order from Subterranean Press, and it did come with a little bookmark. So they do send out bookmarks kind of advertising other books that they sell. But the book that I got is Penrick and the Bandit. This is Bandit. Oh my gosh, I just can't talk today, guys. But this is the most recent book in the Penrick and Desdemona series, which is the current ongoing series in The World of the Five Gods by Lois McMaster Bujold. And I have been collecting these Subterranean Press editions because I just love the cover art on them. And I was able to piece together, because a lot of these are out of print, and so like last year, maybe also the year before, I worked really hard to piece together this series, and I finally managed to get all of the Subterranean Press editions of the books in Penrick and Desdemona. So now I'm just able to keep up with the releases as they come out, and it is signed by the author and numbered. So yeah, I'm really happy to have this. I really want to start The World of the Five Gods this year. The first series, I cannot remember what it's called, but it does start with the book The Curse of Shalion, which I do have. So I do really want to read that because I've created this huge stack in my house of Penrick and Desdemona books, and I can't read them yet. So I'm really hoping I like this series and this author's writing. Because I mean, it was really fun to piece the series together. I got like used copies and library copies, and it was lots of fun, but like I need to actually get into the series. Okay, and then the last book for this book haul I got from Yen Press. So if you didn't know, which I didn't know, Yen Press actually has an online store where you can order things directly from them. And there are some things apparently that they only sell from their online store, and this is one of them. So if you remember from a previous book haul, when I got volume 11 of The Case Study of Vanitas by Jun Mochizuki, I mentioned that I was really disappointed because I had seen some false information about the covers for the standard and special editions of the volume, and I thought the cover I really liked was going to be on the standard edition, and it wasn't. And I was kind of upset because a lot of the time these special editions are only ever produced in Japanese. They're not often published in English, so I was like, well, I'm just not going to get that cover. And then one day, out of curiosity, I think I was looking it up to show my mom the cover, and I saw someone talking about how Yen Press had published the special edition, but you could only order it from their website. And I was so excited, so I immediately went to their website and found it and ordered the special edition of volume 11 of The Case Study of Vanitas. Now, the special cover is only on the little box. The standard cover is on the volume, but still, I'm so happy because we have this cover of Vanitas with the tarte tatin. Is that how you say it? It's French dessert. I'm really sorry, I've said before, my French pronunciation is not good. My English pronunciation today is not good, so it's especially bad, my French today. But we have Vanitas, and then we have Noe and Mur up here in the little mirror, or in the window, wanting the tart. And it's so cute, and I'm so happy to have it. And then, of course, we have volume 11, and it came with, and I didn't know it was going to come with this, it came with a special art book called Brocante 2009 to 2015, Vanitas and Noe. So it has art from Jun Mochizuki of her development of the characters, particularly Vanitas and Noe. And I'm so excited to look through this. Once I read volume 11, I couldn't be happier, honestly. Could not be happier to have this. Especially because I didn't think I was going to get it. And then when I ordered it, I was like, oh, I'm getting the cover I want. And then it also came with an art book. I'm so happy. I can't get them back in the box. Okay, so if you don't know what the case study of Vanitas is about, we follow Noe Archiviste, who is a vampire in a world where vampires are born as such. And most vampires are born under the red moon, and they keep themselves kind of separate from human society because of, I think, some conflict that had occurred in the past. But there's one vampire who is supposedly born under the blue moon, and they call them the vampire of the blue moon. Their name is Vanitas. And most vampires believe that Vanitas, the vampire of the blue moon, has the ability to destroy them or control them using their book, which is called the Book of Vanitas. So at the start of volume 1, Noe is traveling via airship to Paris because he has gotten information that the Book of Vanitas may have surfaced there. And he ends up meeting a human who calls himself Vanitas and has what he claims is the Book of Vanitas. And they discover that there are vampires who are being afflicted by something called a malnomen, which is essentially a corruption of their true name that turns them into monsters who attack humans and other vampires kind of indiscriminately. And Vanitas says that he is a vampire doctor and that he has the ability to heal them using this book. So Noe and Vanitas kind of team up, and they're trying to figure out what is happening to these vampires, who is behind it, and they're going around and trying to help them. And I just love it so much. It's like an alternate version of our world. There are some steampunk elements. It takes place in Paris. It has vampires. I mean, I just love it. I love it so much. And I love the relationships that are developing, particularly between Vanitas and Noe, and just their stories and backstories. And I'm loving this series so much. And this is the most recent volume that has been published in English. So I am going to wait probably until volume 12 comes out, because I do like to read at least 2 volumes together since they are quite short. But I'm so happy to have this. I did end up returning my original volume 11 to Barnes & Noble because I didn't need it, since this one has the same cover art on the actual volume. But I'm ecstatic. I'm so happy to have this. Yeah, what a nice way to end this book haul. Alright, so those are all of the books that I acquired during the month of May. As I said, most of these were pre-orders or gifts or like Kickstarter book subscription. I only actually bought 4 books because I did get the special edition of Vanitas. But I returned my old one. So this one was a little bit more expensive, but like net number of books didn't change. But anyway, so yeah, I've been doing pretty well, I think, with like not ordering a bunch of new books so that I can try to lower my physical TBR a little bit this year and just give myself a break from having so many books just coming into me. But I'm really happy with all of the books that I got in May, all of the ones that came in and that I was given, and I'm just so thankful to live in a place where we have books and be able to read them and have them. But yeah, so anyway, I would love to hear if you guys got any cool books that you're excited about during the month. If you have anything that you're like looking forward to getting later in the year, because I know I have quite a few things that I'm looking forward to coming in. Or if you have read any of these books and you want to like hype me up for them and make me even more excited to read them, or if you are interested in any of these now that you have heard me talk about them. I really genuinely love to talk to you guys in the comments. It makes me so happy. Just as always, please keep all of your comments spoiler free. If we want to do an emoji, let's do a little acorn emoji in honor of my little Totoro dress. You guys can't see the acorns very well. I don't think they're meaning on the top, but there are lots of acorns on the bottom of the dress. So we'll do a little acorn emoji. If you want to leave an emoji with your comment, or if you want to just let me know you were here but you don't have anything to say, you can just put some acorns down there. But yeah, I hope that you guys are having a wonderful day or a wonderful night wherever you are, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!